Welcome back to the Synergistic CX podcast. This is part 2 of our 3-part episode where we're focusing on the customer experience at electronics retail stores with our special guest from the United Kingdom, Andy Firth, Head of Advice and Analytics at Ipsos UK. In our previous segment, we discussed how electronics stores handle responses to online reviews and also how the marketing mix is reflected in those reviews. Now we'll take a look at the customer journey to see how successful this industry is in meeting customer expectations. When a customer walks through the door or uses a store's website online, every interaction contributes to how that brand is perceived. And in a world where customers are used to convenience, often a click away on their phones, the physical electronics store is usually often visited for personalized professional recommendations. So let's start with the customer journey map. So the customer journey, otherwise known as the marketing funnel. The customer journey is literally just that. It's the customer's journey through that establishment or their experience with that particular brand. It starts off with them deciding that they have a need that needs to be met, and then it progresses through various stages until ultimately they perform a conversion where they purchase the product, all the way through to post-purchase support and advocacy and loyalty, where they come back and visit that brand again. In the customer journey, we use a typical 5-stage approach that includes 11 distinct steps. So those 5 stages are awareness, consideration, conversion, retention, and advocacy. Here is a more straightforward version of the customer journey, and you can see those 5 stages across the top: the awareness, consideration, conversion, retention, and advocacy. Below that, you'll see the actual steps that make up those particular stages. Below that, you can see a description of each step and the various touch points that a customer will interact with on that particular step of their journey. And then down at the bottom, you'll actually see different CX methodologies that can be used, such as the mystery shopping that Andy mentioned, to actually measure and target those particular steps. So the next slide will show us the moment of truth. This is where we take those online reviews for that entire industry and we break those down into particular aspects that are mentioned. So if someone has a 4-star review, but they say, for example, that the product explanation was not clear, then that's considered a negative sentiment in that particular step. We take those reviews, we process them with AI, and we will now map them on the customer journey in a nice little up and down fashion so we can see how each particular step is performing in the industry. Does anybody have any guesses before we get to the moment of truth on what the best or worst performing stages or steps might be?
With this combination of people and process, it is unpredictable, in my opinion.
For me, the lowest should be after sales, something related to after sales, post purchase.
A number of industries struggle with post-sale support.
It's like
all industries struggle with that.
It's like,
it's a safe bet.
thank you so much for buying. We don't care about you anymore. Come again when you need to buy again.
I think bakeries did a great job, if I recall.
They did.
Yeah.
It was, as far as I recall, the only one.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's come again when you need it again.
Yeah. Okay. Andy, any guesses?
I think I would go along with that. Yeah, I would expect the staff in the stores to be doing a pretty good job. They're generally well trained and knowledgeable. Mm-hmm. But I agree. After that, who knows?
You know, in product recommendations, that sometimes one of the findings is actually that they say don't buy this brand because it will give you problems in the after sales, and they feel that they'll come to them to get the problem solved.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah. That, I mean, when we see that in our studies, negative sentiment from the staff, and we combine that with actual sales data, you can see a very strong relationship between the two.
It's a big trouble.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, drum roll, please. And here we are. So before we get into the results here, let's actually talk about this particular graph that's on the screen and what this chart represents. So you'll see across the top the 5 different stages that we mentioned before: awareness, consideration, conversion, retention, and advocacy. Down at the bottom, you'll see those 11 steps. So the various parts of the customer journey where the customer is making certain key decisions and also progressing through the key moments in their overall experience. What you have here is some circles and a line in the middle, and then there's also a gray, looks like a blob kind of shape behind that. And what these represent are various metrics from the analysis that we've done with those online reviews. So the line represents the average rating for that particular step in the customer journey. The circle represents how frequently the parts of the experience in that particular step were mentioned. So the larger the circle, the more that that particular step was mentioned in the online reviews, and the smaller the circle, the less it was actually mentioned. The colors represent what they intuitively seem to represent. Green is great. Yellow is a fair representation in the middle, and then you have an orange and then a red at the very bottom. We'll talk about the gray blob in just a moment, but yeah, looking here, there's quite a lot in the yellow and even some red there. And
I told you, it's unpredictable.
yeah,
No one would have guessed terms and services.
yeah, it's pretty remarkable that it's, I mean, if there are complaints in process and people, it's going to affect the entire customer journey. There's almost no steps that don't involve one of those things.
Yeah, let's see here, the support and updates is one of the lowest.
Mhm.
Has the biggest.
Most
Large.
common complaints, yeah. So the gray blob is the standard deviation on the mean, and the simple word there is variance. And what this represents is the spread or the under the bell curve of those types of responses for those particular steps. So if you have an area that has a very large spread, then you will end up having a lot of different range of complaints, and this could suggest operational inconsistency. Whereas if you have a very tight gray spread, then that means that whatever that average is a pretty decent representation of consistent performance in that particular area. Now, whether that's consistently good or consistently bad, that's going to depend on where the dot is, but that's what that gray shape is. So there's a fair amount of inconsistency throughout most of the customer journey here. And yeah, again, averages kind of all over the place. Except for the loyalty and advocacy, that's looking pretty good there. And the conversion step itself is
So the consultation
it's not bad. Yeah, the consultation,
that's in the sense.
they know what they're talking about.
Big and green.
Yeah. So the staff are helping a lot in the consultation, but at the same time, that welcome circle, that's a huge yellow circle there on the left, and that's a commonly complained about item. Andy, any surprises here for you, from your perspective?
Not particularly. I think the variance and the inconsistency is certainly one of the things that stands out for me. Sometimes I tell clients it's sometimes better to be consistently, well, obviously consistently good, but even consistently bad, at least it's consistent and you can do something about it. When it's inconsistent, that's almost the biggest challenge
Right.
that some of our clients face, because it's a bit all over the place. And I think that's what it looked like to me. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, that's the problem sometimes with these more simples, right? Because it happens once to have a very good result, and then okay, very good.
Yeah.
But that was an inconsistency.
Yeah, and across a big sample, that's what we like to see, and
Yeah.
certainly in customer reviews and even mystery shopping, when we get big samples like that, it's, we love that in data, and it really gives a clear narrative to clients. So I thought that was fascinating, actually.
Mm-hmm. One item I found interesting here is the fact that the welcome from the staff was a real big circle, and we've seen that in a bunch of different industries. So that's just something.
Never that big though.
Right.
Never that big.
Right.
So welcoming in this industry seems to be quite profoundly important.
Yeah, and these can be, big electronic retail stores sometimes. I mean, if we were to look at that by time of day or really busy periods, the welcome can be all over the place. And staff, even if staff are busy with other customers, the acknowledgement to someone who's waiting is really important. I'm sorry, I'm just with these customers, but I will help you in a minute. That's as important as a welcome sometimes. But we can see the difference, and that can be down to a lot of factors, but busyness will definitely be one of them.
Yes, actually, in our do-it-yourself store, home improvement store industry study, we had Vicki Dempsey from Janssen on, and she had that particular exact metric where she measured and discovered that yes, if you simply say, "I'll be with you in a few minutes" to someone, because the staff in those stores are often busy, and they'll say, "I'll be with you in a few minutes," and that represented a huge, like a 30% boost in customer satisfaction, just that one little step.
Or sometimes just a smile and eye contact makes all the difference.
Yeah, because if a customer sees an employee with another customer, a reasonable customer would not expect that employee to leave someone they're talking to.
Right.
But as long as they know they've been acknowledged and it's not taking too long, then it will boost your CSAT metrics. Absolutely.
Yeah. Great.
Do you want to see what's happening in the red?
Sure. We always do, right? So yeah, that red dot, not real big, but it represents the terms and services. So this is after you purchased a product, or you're busy talking about what type of services are available with the product, maybe installation, other financing terms, things like that. Let's see what we see inside of here. We actually drilled in a little bit deeper to this particular step in the process, and we've got a list here of the key factors that are causing the low sentiment for that particular step. So when customers are talking about the purchase terms or the services online in their online reviews, these are the 5 key reasons that are causing them, according to their complaint, to rate this negatively. And so we've got the pricing and financial terms. So the actual product pricing and financial terms themselves, 28%. Delivery and installation, 26%. Warranty and after sales coverage is 18%. Policies and processes are 16%. And service and support is 12%. So this is really interesting. Customers are clearly telling us where things go wrong. They have pricing that feels unclear, maybe some delivery delays and poor after sales support. Aside from affecting satisfaction, these types of problems obviously break trust and can damage customer loyalty. Andy, how can research really help organizations not only detect these signals early on, but actually implement changes to fix them?
Well, this sort of survey is, that what you just showed there is absolutely classic. That doesn't surprise me at all. So this type of survey is kind of critical in understanding that. And again, it comes down to not only the employees explaining things better, because some of these big ticket items are bought on finance. So are you explaining the terms and conditions, the interest rate on a loan if there is one? Installation, as you say, is critical. They might forget to say, "Oh, actually, that's an extra $50 for that installation." Well, you didn't tell me that. Why didn't you tell me that? Oh, and we can't install it for 3 weeks. Well, these are the things that really, and then when it arrives, the correct people aren't there to install a washing machine and do the plumbing. These are the things that will annoy customers more than anything, and that will take a big hit on your CSAT type metrics. So employees need to get better at explaining things. Obviously, they've got to focus on the sale, but these back-end things are just as important, and they've got to tie that together with the delivery companies who might be a different delivery company.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So it's the whole thing being brought together, not just focusing on the sale itself.
Another interesting piece there is that I find that a lot of times the staff, the employees that are actually the ones doing the consulting, they're very passionate about the technology and the products and everything.
Yeah.
Probably not so much payment and delivery.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so they're not going to necessarily dive into that on their own, and they need to be trained to actually explain those options.
Yeah, and sometimes the salesperson selling the item is what we call a brand ambassador. So they are employed by brand X. But once they've sold the product, the finance might be provided by brand B or the retailer, and then the delivery is option might be a different company altogether. So it's
And then assemble another one.
exactly, yeah. So it's disjointed, and a customer doesn't care about that.
Mhm.
They just want a good process from start to finish, as that's showed perfectly well, and it doesn't surprise me at all. I don't know about you guys,
Yeah,
but
because for the customers, it should be a one-step
absolutely,
Mhm.
process.
absolutely.
And where does mystery shopping fit into all of this, especially in multi-brand environments? Can it also help to have the manufacturers, can it help the manufacturers understand how their products and promises are being represented through the customer journey?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is what we would call product recommendation mystery shopping. That is literally the name we give to it, because if someone goes into a store and says, I'm looking for a new television, they don't mention a brand, they are literally going in to buy a TV. If the brand that is recommended first, the salesperson said, okay, well, I recommend brand A, the chances of that sale being converted over a brand that isn't recommended at all, or certainly a brand that the salesperson says something negative about, the difference in conversion rate on that sale is massive. So for manufacturers, it's absolutely critical. And product recommendation mystery shopping is really the only way they can find out how that salesperson is selling it at the point of inquiry. It's difficult to ask a customer post-sale, certainly someone who hasn't bought the product, the specifics of the recommendation, what they said. So it's one of my favorite types of mystery shopping, actually.
Mm-hmm. That is a fascinating topic. I'd love to pick your brain over a beer at the conference here.
So absolutely. But, we're talking about electronics today, but any manufacturers selling via third-party retailers of anything you can think of, phones, tech, laptops, TVs, electronic, even mattresses we work with, that recommendation is critical.
They want to be the top of mind.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's have a look at our key takeaways then. So obviously we want to maximize the consultation with experts peak. So that was a pretty strong performing step right there, and you want to make sure that that is as high as possible. We want to simplify the purchase terms and services. That's obviously a red area that was on the customer journey map. So there's definitely some improvement that can be taken there. And elevating the post-purchase support is key. Anybody that has to buy a product and then deal with after-sales support definitely needs to feel like that support center is there for them. So that's a key area that can always be improved in almost every industry. And you want to activate your advocates. So the advocacy stage showed really strong positive feedback, which was a really good sign. Not mentioned a whole lot, however. So it's something that could be really amplified even more in the customer journey to help cause additional advocacy and loyalty and growth for that particular store. So next, what we like to do is explore the marketing mixed funnel matrix, or the MFM, for the electronic stores. And what this is an interesting chart that really shows where the negative action is taking place. So if you look at the top across these 5 columns on the top, you'll have these same 5 stages from the customer journey. You have the awareness, consideration, conversion, retention, and advocacy. And then down the left-hand side of the chart, we have these 7 particular Ps that we've talked about from the marketing mix, which is the people, the process, the product, place, price, promotion, and physical evidence. Now with online reviews, you primarily get a lot of heavy weight in particular areas like we identified for this particular industry, a lot of negative feedback in the first 2 rows of people and process. And what we've got here is a red bar in each intersection that actually shows what proportion of the negative reviews fall into that intersection. So we know that people are very often negatively mentioned in the online reviews, and the 2 particular stages across the top where that happens the most is the consideration and the conversion stages. So those are 2 particular parts of the customer experience that can really be targeted for improvement. And that's what the MFM, the marketing mixed funnel matrix, really does, is it helps to identify areas to target for improvement in the customer experience process, whether that's by doing additional sampling or implementing some objective studies such as mystery shopping programs or audit programs. And we've got the top 5 here with a little black arrow next to them. So now that we've seen some various areas where improvement could be made, we can now talk about creating a starter voice of the customer survey. Now, voice of the customer surveys are a great way to collect additional feedback. In the world of customer experience measurement, there are many different tools, and online reviews and ratings are one that we saw earlier. The nice thing about those is they're relatively inexpensive to capture and analyze, and they're a great place to start with examining a particular brand's customer experience. They're what we call a subjective program. So they measure customer perceptions, thoughts, and feelings. And another subjective program is voice of the customer surveys, where it's actually a solicited survey or an open survey that someone can come and fill out, which captures additional information. So now we're going to talk about creating a starter voice of the customer survey for this particular industry. So now, Emil, can you take us through creating a starter voice of the customer survey for electronics retail stores?
Absolutely, Eric. So what we are suggesting here is a methodology for creating the optimal, or the way we call it, starter voice of the customer survey. So our logic is we have already uncovered the most prevalent trends with regards to customer thoughts and feelings from the online reviews and ratings. And it doesn't make sense to answer the same questions to get the same answers. So what we want to do is to create a survey with a minimum number of questions. Why minimum? Because we have a very minimum time span with regards to how much time the customers will award to us to take this additional feedback. So we want to make sure that the questions are the most relevant, and the follow-up question to any key driver question that we would ask points down to the key pain points that we have already identified from the online reviews and ratings. So the mechanics of this starter views survey are quite straightforward. We start with the general satisfaction question, which would be, for example, how satisfied, on a scale from 1 to 5, how satisfied are you with brand X? And then we ask 5 key driver questions, which are aligned with the red areas from the mixed funnel matrix. And then we end with a closing question. In the meanwhile, if any of the key driver questions is answered with a non-5-star rating question, we drill down into the possible reasons. And here we again handpick the most prevalent red areas that come out from the mixed funnel matrix. So let's see how this would look like in our specific case. From the mixed funnel matrix, the top 5 weakest performing steps are welcoming from the store staff, post-purchase support and updates, consultation with the electronics experts, sales and checkout process, and evaluation of electronics, quality of product, and service. So our key drivers will be focused on these 5 areas. And there we go. So this is how our suggestion for the starter voice of the customer survey would look like. We start with the standard CSAT question, how satisfied are you with brand X? And then we follow with the key driver questions. I'll just give an example with the first one. Greeting, how satisfied are you with the greeting you received from our staff? This will be answered with a 1 to 5-star rating. And then if the answer of that question is anything from 1 to 4 stars, we're going to ask a follow-up question, which is going to dive deeper into the key driver elements, such as warm and friendly greeting, prompt acknowledgement, and so on and so forth. So that is, in a nutshell, the mechanics that we're using here and the logic of the voice of the customer, starter voice of the customer survey. Minimum number of questions which are targeted to the key pain points which we have identified in the mixed funnel matrix. So this is a step further, but still a very high-level data collection.
This is the end of part 2 of our 3-part episode here on the Synergistic CX podcast, where we're focusing on electronics retail stores. In the next segment, we'll have a more in-depth discussion with our special guest, Andy Firth. from Ipsos UK regarding the customer experience in this particular industry and his expertise in general. Remember that you can download the details of this study for free on our website, cx-channel.com. And you can also follow the CX channel on LinkedIn, YouTube, or your favorite social media to stay on top of each of our monthly podcasts. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next episode.